Blockchain bootstrapping. How do you bootstrap a blockchain? Where do you get the first block from? Where do you get the second one, third? How are you certain that you actually got all the blocks from the current main chain? How many peers do you connect to? Do you verify? Do you call your friends and ask, what's your current block height? What's your current block hash? So these are the top topics we're discussing in this lecture. So when you bootstrap, you're kind of like alone, right? You stand here, there's a void, there's nothing, there's no other blockchain. So the only thing that you get at some point knowledge about is the Genesis block. And the Genesis block is basically hard-coded in your blockchain client, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any other. So you have this thing called home, the Genesis block. But from there, you don't really know which one is the second one. So where's the chain? There are different ways of identifying the different peers that you can interact with. I think what's the most common is actually here is hard-coded IP addresses that are within the blockchain clients, and these IPs, for obviously reasons, have to be static, meaning they should not change. So in the Bitcoin client, you have a few static IP addresses that you can find and that you could resolve. You can also add some DNS bootstrap, so you can have a few dedicated domain names that serve other IP addresses. For example, there's CPA, so this is Peter Wheeler. He's offering a DNS bootstrap service in the Bitcoin client. So if you connect to this DNS address and you ask him for a get address function, you will get a few addresses from his particular address. And what you can also do is you can go here to chat or forums and you can ask around for IP addresses of other participants. So I actually did that this was for Primecoin at some time. I had a client and it couldn't connect to the network because neither the hard-coded nor the hard-coded DNS names returned any useful addresses. So I went to a forum, I asked around for IPs of other participants. They gave me some IPs and then I manually added them to the Primecoin client at the time, and then I was able to catch up to the chain. It's risky because so if you have a network of peers, like they're different peers, they might serve you different blockchains, right? And especially if you start at the Genesis block typically has a very simple difficulty. So you don't want to be kind of eclipsed, right? So let's say everybody on this side here has the orange chain, right? And everybody on this side has the purple chain. And the difficulty of the purple chain, let's say, is bigger than the difficulty of the orange chain. So for an adversary, it's actually easier to perform an attack on this side, right? So this is here, it's easier than on the purple side because the difficulty is lower. So it's easier to mount double spending attacks. So for you as a node, you really want to be aware of everything, right? So you want to be aware of this chain and of this chain. So ideally you want to be here, kind of a man in the middle, knowing everything about all the chains that are exchanged, to judge which one is it's the true one. So a Bitcoin node has by default 117 outgoing TCP connections, 8 incoming connections. So to have incoming connections, you have to open a TCP port. I believe this is the 8333 port at the moment. And once you receive a packet, right? Once you receive a packet, either through the outgoing or through the incoming connections, there's a so-called packet validation that is done. So you validate the signature of the transaction, you validate the consistency of the transaction, you check whether the whether the unspent transaction outputs were spent or not, right? Whether they're actually unspent. And there are a few DNS service protections that we'll look at in a bit.